Welcome back, everyone, to Ed Up Edge, where we discuss all things career education, leadership, and life hacks. Hear from some of the most amazing and insightful guests in higher education. Let's go. Hello, welcome back, everyone, to Ed Up Edge, where we discuss all things career education, leadership, and life hacks. Today's going to be exciting because this is one of my favorite topics, admissions. Hello. So I have with me Teege Mettille. Okay, Teege has been a leading voice in college admissions, whose expertise in ethical leadership and transformative practices have been a game changer. Teach is also the author of the Admissions Counselor Malaise, and he
Yes.
co-hosts the Admissions Directors Lunchcast. So, Teej, welcome.
Oh, Kathy, thank you so much. You are so kind. So kind. I'm glad to be here.
Sure, sure. I'm glad to have you. So, Teej, talk to us about your background. How did you get into higher education? Did you fall in by accident, like most people?
Oh, fell in by absolutely. That's how it goes. So I was a first generation college student myself. I was not college bound in high school. Nobody tracked me. Nobody expected it. Not my counselors, not my parents, not my teachers, not me. But ended up at UW Whitewater and just had the most transformative experience. I can't imagine my life without having gone to college. And so, like many of us that work in higher ed, I found a way to stay because I loved being on a college campus. And two, what I love about admissions is helping students in similarly situated, right, who don't see themselves as college bound or don't kind of see the path for them, and helping them see something in themselves that maybe they don't currently see. And I love that about our work and what we do, and that kind of drives many of the approaches I take to admissions.
I absolutely love that. You know what? I think that we should include that in job post, when it
Yeah.
comes to looking for admissions advisors, because that's admissions summed up, okay, in
Mhm.
one sentence. So, what inspired you to write the Admissions Counselor Malaise?
Yes, well, I love admissions counselors, right? And
Hmm.
obviously started as an admissions counselor, but I elevated to director, dean, vice president. And as I kept kind of moving up on the hierarchy, it's always been said the higher up you go, the less time you spend with students. And that's true. But I
Yeah.
also noticed the higher up you go, the less focused everybody around you is on individual students, and the more focused they are on numbers and revenue,
Yep.
et cetera. And so that's fine. The coming out of the pandemic era, there was a recognized staff morale crisis, and it persisted still much longer at admissions, and it changed our hiring practices, our timelines, and it continues to this day. And I was inspired to write the book because I was like, okay, what is happening with admissions counselors? Because it's not just the pandemic, which was the easy
Hmm.
excuse that we used. But I went back over 20 years is the kind of time window I use as a rhetorical device in the book, and say, what did admissions look like 20 years ago? What does it look like now? And then the point I make is that's not what we meant. And this is not the type of work admissions counselors want to do. Admissions counselors now are feeling that they're being judged not on finding awesome students or helping students, which is what drives them to work every day. They're being judged on yield rates, enrollment numbers, net tuition revenue, and they're recoiling against it. But I was inspired to write the book because we didn't have a name for this problem. And
Mm.
when I was an undergraduate student, I majored in women's studies, now referred to as gender studies. And I was assigned a book called The Feminine Mystique. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Kathy, but
No.
um, I was assigned it in college. I read it recently for the first time. So you can read between the lines there. I didn't read it when I was supposed to, but it's recognized as kind of kicking off the third wave of the feminist movement by identifying suburban 1950s housewives, a small subset of women in America at the time, but
Hmm.
they had everything they were supposed to want, all the modern conveniences, the suburban home, the 2.4 children, all that, and they were just unhappy. Rates of alcoholism, volume, suicide were going up and up. And
Hmm.
part of the challenge was nobody had a name for what was happening, so they couldn't address it. And they were all performing happiness for each other because they had everything
Wow.
they were supposed to have. So I took that concept, a problem that has no name, And I said, I think something similar is happening in the world of admissions. And I try and identify it and name it. And I do keep touching back to the great work from Betty Friedan in the 19, Away came out in the 60s. Most of her work was done in the 50s. So.
Wow. Okay, that was loaded. And you know what's funny because it's kind of like what happens in life today, right? Sometimes people are stuck in certain
Yes.
situations based on who they were like 10, 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like those times where you're like, I don't know what's going on. There's something that's causing me this
Mm-hmm.
uneasiness feeling, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I just can't put my finger on it. And so that was very clever. I absolutely love that.
Well, thank you. And it reminds me, so I'm here in my home office. Just on the other side of the door behind me is the chart on the wall where I measure my son's height every few months.
Uh-huh.
And the reason we do things like that is because when you're around something every day, when you're around, not something, in this case, when you're around a very human person, my son, he grows just a little bit every day and you never realize
Mhm.
it. And in
Yeah.
admissions, those of us that have been in it, it's been slowly evolving to something we did not intend and do not like. And we never really realized it. And so what I'm doing is just kind of shining a bright light on, look at the gap between the job we thought we had and the job we ended up having. And that identifies, I think, the challenge we need to overcome.
I love that. And that's why so many advisors feel that they've been bamboozled,
Yes.
after they've received the job. And then 2, 3 weeks into it, they're like, wait a minute, what is all of this? You didn't tell me how to make all these calls. You didn't tell me
Mm-hmm.
that students are this indecisive. And it's like
Uh-huh.
the cycle goes on and it's a revolving door. So, where did the idea for the podcast, the Admissions Directors Lunchcast, come from?
Yes, the quick version, right? Of course, it's
Uh huh.
always everything's always a little more nuanced than that. But the quick version is during the pandemic, I was a sitting vice president at the time, and a friend of mine, also vice president, recognized two things. One, there was a lack of professional development opportunities during the pandemic. And two, we wanted to create a space where admissions directors can get insights, advice, thoughts, etc., from folks outside their office. So essentially, the short version is, Nathan, the co-host, and I came up with a list of like, what do we wish our admissions directors were hearing when we're not around, and let's create a space for that to happen.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. And how long has that been going?
Well, we're currently recording our 9th season. We do 2 seasons a year, so it's coming up on
Nice.
5 years. Yeah, I didn't expect it to go that long, to be honest. But here we
Really?
are.
Why?
Yeah, I think Kathy, you know how it is with podcasts, right? Like, there's so many out there, and so we're just another one. I wasn't sure we'd find an audience. Yeah, our target audience is admissions directors, of which there's a few hundred in the country, right? So,
Okay.
there's that, but it's continued to evolve and expand, and we now have an annual in-person event every year, the Lunchcast Lectures,
Wow.
where we bring folks together in Milwaukee, where I'm from, and continue the conversation. So it's a growing community, small but growing community, which we appreciate.
Interesting. I love that. And congratulations. 9 seasons.
9 seasons, yeah.
Okay. So, what does ethical leadership in admissions actually look like?
Yeah, it's tricky because the challenges on college campuses are vast and they're serious, right?
Hmm.
College closures are real. It's a
Yeah.
real problem to like make sure that the institution has the revenue and the funding it needs to operate. Got it. I'm not Pollyanna about that. And that's not going away. But I think ethical leadership in the world of admissions involves, even in spite of those pressures, not giving in to the need to never lose. Let me rephrase that sentence. Not losing sight of the fact that at the end of the day, these are students' dreams, hopes, and ambitions we're working with. And I think it's too easy to fall into the trap of just finding students to fill the class, even if they're not necessarily the best match. In our profession, it used to be colleges would go out and look for students that would be a fit for the institution. And what's
Hmm.
changed over time is now we're looking for ways to change the institution to fit students generally, and we're losing a lot of the uniqueness and the specialty on college campuses, and we're commoditizing, we're letting ourselves become commodities, and we're not serving students with the passion we used to.
And that actually ties into the dilemmas that admissions counselors face as well, because it's a trickle down
Mm-hmm.
effect. I had a video on LinkedIn the other day that was talking about selfish ambition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about putting your goals and your desires above the needs of others. So now
Mm-hmm.
admissions has become this business where it's like, okay, we need X amount of students by X amount of
Correct.
time. And
Correct.
now ethics come into play,
Mm-hmm.
where we're lacking that in admissions teams, because they're like, okay, so this person may not be the best fit, but I have a number to make. Okay, I need
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that I bring in my start. And now it's like, are we doing a disservice to the students? And so, what are
Mm-hmm.
some other dilemmas that you've seen that admissions counselors are actually facing?
Yeah, admissions counselors are struggling because they've held on to their moral core during this, by and
Hmm.
large, right? That's part of the challenge with that I uncovered with the admissions counselor Malaise. Their leadership is saying we need you to be focused on numbers, and they're saying they're refusing, right? They're not going down that path by and large. They're kind of the
Yeah.
last bulwark against it. But the types of challenges that they're experiencing is they're seeing students turned off by the sticker price. That admissions counselors know the sticker price is not real, and we're letting students close the door on great opportunities so that we can have a marketing gimmick and offer a discount, right, to students who don't need the gimmick or the discount.
Hmm.
Admissions counselors are feeling the burden of way too many applications because we keep just putting more names at the top of the traditional funnel, if you will. And so I think the biggest kind of ethical dilemma admissions counselors face is, 20 years ago, they may have had 250 applicants throughout the year. Now they have 500 or 600. I've seen 750. So the ethical dilemma they have is, I only have so much time in a day. Who am I gonna give that
Yep.
resource to? Who am I going to give that time to? And admissions counselors, we are access oriented people. We are in this to help students find their way to
Hmm.
college. And so the idea of leave some students behind is antithetical to who we are.
Yeah.
And so we end up either picking and choosing students to talk to, or watering down a relationship with everybody and not providing the level of service that we need. One of the things that's happened over 20 years, with the best of intentions, colleges have made their application process easier and simpler, right? If the
Hmm.
application fee was stopping students from applying, colleges were like, well, that's silly. Get rid of the $20 application. We don't need
Exactly.
your $20. If the test scores were a problem, get rid of it. If the essay is a problem, get rid of it, right? So in the interest of kind of opening the doors to access, we're bringing more applicants in while simultaneously not giving those applicants the resources they need in time and attention from an admissions counselor to actually help
Yeah.
them determine if this is a good match for them. So students, um, almost inversely from our intention, are being set up to make a decision with more choices and less information.
Oh, that's really good. And something that you mentioned when you spoke about watering down the relationship.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Oh my gosh, Teach, I listen to so many calls, and sometimes I just want to pull my hair out, because you hear the student, they're pouring out their lives, they're telling you why they haven't made it yet, what they want to
mm-hmm.
accomplish, what their goals are. And on the other line, all you hear from the advisors is, okay, so are you able to start next month? Okay, so these are the classes we have. And it's like, wait a minute, you
Yeah,
just missed
yeah.
this person's entire story. The
Mm-hmm.
connection is just absent. So, how do you think institutions can balance enrollment goals and the student well being?
Yeah, I stand pretty firm on the idea that if an institution, you know, there's some figuring out over time that comes in, but if you tell enough students enough information about your institution, your numbers will come together, right? You don't need to trick anybody. You don't need to overlook anybody. You just need to be sure that you have a clear
Hmm.
sense of how many students you need to be engaged with.
Hmm.
The way institutions can balance this, one, is finding a way, and this is the work I do. I work for an ed tech company in Roll ML, where we help admissions counselors figure out which students are actively considering your institution.
Hmm.
And in doing so, then those are the students to really spend time with and get to know. If I can give you an example,
Yeah.
this is not a counselor I worked with, but someone I became familiar with, who was doing recruitment work for an institution and told their supervisor, I'm not going to recruit that student. They're a single mother, and I don't think they're going to be able to handle the demands of college. And obviously problematic, right? We could, I was a women's
Mm-hmm.
studies major. We could go on for hours about the problems there, but the intention was good, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I be sure I'm not setting someone up for failure? That's what that counselor was trying to do. They were doing a
Yeah.
real poor job of it, right? But that's what they were after. Whereas the right approach would be, all right, if you have this concern, it's a valid concern. How do we not make that decision for that student, but make sure they understand what the expectations are going to be, and that they're going to be able to make the most informed decision for themselves. So the answer is not in a very paternalistic way to just step in and say,
Mm-hmm.
you can't handle this. The answer is spend the time to get to know the student. Institutions need to get admissions counselors back to that work, but the
Yes.
way they have to do it is to help counselors understand who is open and needing that conversation and who isn't.
Absolutely. And this is where a lot of admissions teams fall short because they tend to put everyone in a box,
You got it.
right? Like you're saying, you get a single mom on the phone, you're like, okay, I already know what this situation is and who this
Mm-hmm,
person is and what direction it's going. But
mm-hmm,
at the same time, do you know what that single mom has been through over the past several years? Do you know what that person has accomplished?
mm-hmm,
But we're looking at the cover and we're saying, all right, throw that person in the box. We already know that they're not going to be successful. And now
mm-hmm,
that person misses out on that opportunity. And the
mm-hmm,
advisor
mm-hmm.
misses out on the opportunity to help that person get to the next level in their career.
You got it. You got it.
And it is so sad. So when we talk about malaise, right?
Yes.
What do you think is one of the major quote unquote malaise, right, that admissions counselors go through? I'll say the Sunday night blues, that uneasy feeling every single Sunday. And they're like,
Uh-huh.
oh my gosh, do I want to go to work? Should I stay in this career? Am I over my head? What do you think?
Yeah, I do think that like the constant pressure on more and more calls, right,
Mm-hmm.
is part of it because if for admissions counselors that are working in like a call center type environment, when you're just calling all of your applicants randomly, well, we now know that we've created a bunch of applications from students who aren't very interested, right?
Ooh,
And so when counselors are spending time with students, just trying to hope against hope that they might be interested, they're getting a lot of hangups, they're getting rude answers, they're getting a lot of responses from folks that just aren't interested in the institution, and that's very demoralizing. And
yeah.
so if we can help counselors, or if counselors can help themselves and find a way to focus on the students that are giving serious, genuine consideration to the institution as a match for them and their goals and aspirations, that's going to go a long way in making them feel better about their work.
I love that. You know what? Our students today, especially Gen Z, they suffer with a lot of phone anxiety, right?
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm,
our advisors, they suffer with phone anxiety also.
mm-hmm,
And it's because sometimes when they pick up the phone, they already know what's going to happen, or they're assuming what's going to happen on the other line. Like
mm-hmm,
you said, the person being rude,
mm-hmm,
how did you get my information? I'm not interested. I'm already in school. I'm not ready into the next 5 years.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And advisors are thinking, I know that I have expectations that I have to meet. I am not up for this challenge today with
Mm-hmm.
every single call. And it does ruin their morale,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
now on a Sunday night, they're like, oh my gosh, here we go. I had a great weekend. And sometimes they
Uh-huh.
don't because they spend the entire weekend thinking about the anxiety of Monday,
Uh-huh.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like we
Yep.
have to find a way to increase that morale and get our admissions advisors back to the point where they're excited about talking to our students.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because I mean that is why they get into this work, right? When
Yeah,
an
exactly.
admissions counselor gets their job, they're excited. They call someone, right? I say this to admissions counselors when I do training for our software company.
Uh-huh.
When you got this job, you were excited, right? And I say that because they're not always excited anymore, and that's a tell for us. But you were
Yes.
excited, and you called someone, maybe a girlfriend, boyfriend, a spouse, a parent, a friend, and you were excited, and you said to them, "I get to insert the blank," and that usually was some version of help students. That's what they're
Yes.
excited about. I'll tell you what they never say, Kathy. They never say, I get to help a regional public institution increase its net tuition revenue rate in a marginal percentage, right? Like that's not what we're excited about, but that's what we're measuring them on. And if
Mm-hmm.
we can get them back to, here are the students you can help. You are uniquely positioned to help them. No one else can do this. And they need you. You're going to feel
Yes.
the intrinsic value of your work, the intrinsic benefits of your work. If you focus on these students, that will change the whole dynamic for them.
I think that's more conversations that need to be had within admissions teams
Hmm.
weekly. I think sometimes leaders are moving so quickly. It's just, okay, the next start. And then as
Hmm.
soon as you
Hmm.
get to a start, the very next day, we're building for the next start. And I think
Yep.
we need to pause. You know, the same time when when they're interviewing a student, at the end, I always tell them, pause and ask the
Hmm.
student, okay, how do you feel about everything? I know this was a lot of information. We need to do the same thing within admissions teams. All right, let's pause for a second. How do you feel about this start? How do you feel about your role? Are you still excited? What are some areas that you think we can work on together? I don't think we're having that conversation enough within admissions teams. So it's just like a hamster wheel going absolutely nowhere and the same cycle
Hmm.
happening over and over. Then quiet quitting starts, and then we're wondering why we're losing our team members.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm not wondering anymore. I'm not wondering, right? Like here it is.
Well, we're not
Here it is.
wondering, but some of the leaders, they're like, aha, I wonder what's
Yeah.
happened.
Well, because remember, and this is what I explored in the book, The Admissions Counselors Malaise.
Hmm.
Leaders, admissions leaders got there by being counselors 10 years ago, or 15 or
Yes.
20 or 30, right? And so when they think about the job of an admissions counselor, it may not be the current job,
Yeah.
right? It looks the same. It looks
Mhm.
very similar. But I did with Enroll that's the ed tech company I work for. We did a time study where we did qualitative research with 22 admissions leaders about how much time they expect their counselors to be doing various activities related to yielding and recruiting a class.
Hmm.
And what we uncovered, and this almost to a person, Kathy, when I did the math live in front of them, were shocked at. I rolled up how much time of all those tasks was just related to spreadsheets, data maintenance, data analysis, queries. And
Wow.
on average, it was a third of a counselor's time. A third was in queries, recording notes, entering data, evaluating data. And we are not hiring people that want to do that work.
Nope.
We could hire data analysts, but we're not.
Hmm.
We're hiring energetic, effervescent people that want to connect with students. And then we're saying, so glad you're here. Please sit down and figure out how to use Excel.
Ah, my gosh. And Teach, I hope that you guys are paying attention. This has been happening for so long. And Teach, you know what's interesting? Over almost 2 decades ago, I remember when I was first an advisor, the
Okay.
word counselor, that was a
Mm-hmm.
no-no, okay, within our admissions teams. You're
Okay.
not here to counsel anyone. You're not a therapist. You're here to enroll. Okay, we need X amount of students for the next start. But now it's been a switch. Now you have to counsel. We have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
broken people in our world. We have people who have no idea how to get to the next step. You have to be able to take a step back and understand, who are you actually speaking to? You know, what do they
Mm-hmm.
want to accomplish? And then pair that to what the school actually has to offer. So you are a counselor now. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
before, it's like you're an admissions counselor, but just ignore the actual definition of
Right.
what a
Right.
counselor actually is. So let's talk about solutions. All right.
Yeah.
What are some of the solutions that we can come up with to keep admissions teams engaged and
Yeah.
motivated? I'm tired of hearing leaders say, excuse me, you need to be motivated on your own. Okay, that's why I hired you.
Yeah. There's some very tangible tactical things that admissions leaders can do right now today.
Okay.
That's easy. An admissions director, maybe they need to look at numbers with their counselors. Maybe. Okay. I would question the premise, but maybe they do in their weekly or biweekly or monthly meetings. But every chance they get, they should ask an admissions counselor, not how are the numbers, how are your applicants, etc., but tell me about a student you're really excited about. I promise you, the admissions counselors, they have students they're excited about, they will tell you. And the admission, they need to feel like their institution and their leadership cares. College presidents need to do the same thing. Every time they run into an admissions counselor, they need to not say, how are the numbers? They need to say, tell me someone I'm going to love meeting when they get to campus this fall. And again, the admissions counselors, they'll have the names. And
Yeah.
it has a sense of like, show me that you know me, right? The counselors will feel
Yes.
heard and seen. So that's one thing. Another thing, this is less immediate, right? This is
Mhm.
the work that I do with Enroll but admissions leaders need to identify applicants that they need to cut loose. And by that I mean
Ooh.
not completely give up on. Keep them in the comm flow. let them get emails, let them raise their hand if they're interested. But there are too many applicants for admissions counselors to be treating everybody exactly the same. You need, on your lowest end of interest, the comm flow is reaching out, sending messages, texts, and counselors or students can reply and kind of raise their hand. And maybe sometimes that does include a calling campaign that is intentionally
Mm-hmm.
very different. But you need to show counselors of all of your applicants, right? If there are 100 applicants, 50 to 70 are not interested in your institution. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why they applied. I can't tell you, but they're not interested, right? 10 or so are already set and ready to move in. Great. Which means we have this big chunk, a manageable amount where the charge can be to counselors. Find us the greatest, like the best match students in this group. Get to know them, get to know their families, understand their motivation, understand their drive. And counselors will do it. Now they'll need to be
Mm-hmm.
trained differently. Counselors have been trained. This is what you were referring to, Kathy, in your story
Mm-hmm.
of the student pours their heart out and the counselor says, but your transcript, right? Counselors are trained to have a very explicit call
Yeah.
to action. I'm reaching out because I need you to do this thing. And it's uncomfortable, but counselors need to take it in a different direction. And the leaders need to train them for that. So 3 steps, it's all coming to the leader. I don't think this is on the admissions counselor to fix. Show admissions counselors that you care about who they're recruiting. Show it. Help them see which students they should not be spending a lot of personal time and energy in. Your institution can
Mm-hmm.
still recruit them, but the counselor needs to pull back. And train your counselors on how to have unscripted, unmapped out conversations where the student is driving what they need and want from the institution and the interactions.
I absolutely love that. You know what? That actually ties into advisors not knowing when to cut the plug with students who
Uh-huh.
are actually enrolled too, right? I find that some teams they hold on to students forever, and it's like this person hasn't responded to you in like 2 months. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when is the time to cut the cord? But what they're
Yeah,
thinking and what some leaders do is no, 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 we don't want to cut any opportunity from any student. But at the
mm-hmm.
same time, your advisors are wasting a lot of time reaching out to students who probably already started at other schools and they just
Got it.
didn't tell the advisor. You know, so in your opinion, what do you think is the best cutoff time when it comes to
Sure.
enrolled students?
Well, and that's what I love about the work we do at Enroll Them Out, because we do a data science project and we have an answer to that that's
Uh-huh.
institution specific, right? Like we say after 38 days after admitted, if they haven't submitted, if they haven't followed up or done this, their enrollment probability degrades. But I would say this. I don't know, and I don't think there's a solid answer for when for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I would say if you're just rolling over applications from one start date to another start date, like yeah, you're going to get diminished returns on that. But it's not that even if for whatever reason, if you're not ready to like remove a student from the campaigns, that's fine. That's fine. Let them get as many emails as they want until they hit unsubscribe. What I'm suggesting is those students need a different level of engagement, a different type of engagement from the institution, and it is not the counselor's time on the phone. That's my proposal. Instead, I would say for students at the bottom, come up with a campaign that's like going to just keep reminding them, we're here, we're ready when you are, and have a net to catch them when they're interested. So
Mm-hmm.
when I say, when I talk to admissions counselors and I say, here's all of your applications, and we've done the data science work, we can show you, here are the students that don't appear to be interested yet. Don't spend time with them. I used to get a lot of like recoil from admissions counselors who don't want to leave any student behind. And that's, Kathy, just
Yeah.
what you were reflecting there. What
Mm-hmm.
I've come to see and help, and the way I say it is, you're not ignoring any student. You're not taking opportunities away. You're not leaving them behind. You are respecting the signals that they're sending you, and they're telling you every way they can, except verbally, that they're not interested. Now, I wish they would tell us verbally too, right? Or just reply
Mm-hmm.
to the email that says I'm not interested. They won't do it.
Exactly.
They won't do it. Your counselors know they won't do it. I don't know why they won't do it, but they won't. So let's look at the other signals of interest. And when you just keep getting a brick wall, respect the students, give them a type of engagement that meets them where they're at, a different type of engagement for students that are ready to start today if they could. And for the students in the middle, these are the swing students that are going to make or break your class. Those are where the most valuable resource a college has to recruit a class is the time of the admissions counselor. Surge the resources there.
Mm. You said something very important. Students who are not ready to start today. I think that
Mhm.
there needs to be some reconditioning within our missions teams also, because I think they're trained that every student needs to be ready right now. And if a
Mm-hmm.
student is not ready, there's something that they did wrong or there's something that they
Mm,
missed. And that's not necessarily true. Some people are just not ready. And I think we need to get that message across to advisors that it's okay. Once you've done everything that you needed to do, you dotted every I, you crossed every T, you asked the right questions, you really made that
mhm,
connection. If that person feels as if they're not ready for whatever reason, it is okay. Still keep them in the pot, give them like
mhm,
touches,
mhm.
throughout the next couple of months or, sessions, but back off because you do not want to turn the student off 100%. Then you start hearing, oh my gosh, you guys are really needy. Now you're blocked.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Teege, I absolutely love this conversation. I feel like we can go on for like the next 5 hours. But how can institutions shift towards more student-centered admissions?
Yeah, I think it's many of the things we've been talking about, which is
Mm-hmm.
um, you've got to identify a manageable number of applicants that you can really get to know. I
Mm-hmm.
am absolutely convinced, Kathy, admissions counselors, when they see a student who is not a good match for the institution, it's not that, like that example I shared, it's not like they're going to close the door, but they're going to make sure the student has the information that they need. Admissions counselors are not interested in tricking students to
Mm-hmm.
enroll. So it's how can you find a way to actually get to know the students? That's how you become student centered, right? Like it's almost definitional in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that work is not scalable across your entire applicant pool. And as long as you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to treat all students equally, you're not going to do it. Now, I think admissions leaders are hesitant to just turn admissions counselors loose on that because
Mm-hmm.
the subjective determinations from admissions counselors are not reliable and are not good. You end up with situations like that counselor who says she's a single mother, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where what can institutions do? And this is the work I keep finding. Find a way to identify with clarity and confidence which students aren't ready to be your students yet, and give them a different treatment, a different level of engagement, and then train your counselors how to get to know a student. And it's not asking for documents.
Yep. There you go. So when we talk about burnout,
Mhm.
what is some advice that you have for admissions counselors or leadership who's going
Yeah.
through burnout right now?
Well, leaders, it's you spend more time with students, right? Find a way to spend
Mhm.
time with students that will be recharging you. For admissions counselors, this is a question that comes up a lot. And I say, if your campus leadership is not focused enough on who you're recruiting, you still are, and find outlets to work and celebrate that work, right? Whether it's at
Mm,
home, whether it's other counselors, whether it's colleagues at other institutions, find people who you can like celebrate the great students you are working with and you are helping, just to reinforce. I think the intrinsic motivation that we have to help students, if that's not being celebrated internally, they should. The institution should change that. But you don't need to wait for your director to come around for you to make
yeah,
sure that you're not losing sight of that.
yeah. Love it. Love it. Teej, thank you so much for coming today. All right, two things. Number
Two things.
one, how can people get their hands on your book?
The admissions counselor malaise. Well, two things. If you go to either the Iowa ACAC conference or the North Dakota ACAC, I'm sorry, the Dakota ACAC conference this spring, I will be the keynote speaker talking about the admissions counselor malaise at
Nice.
both of those conferences. But if you're not going to be in the upper Midwest, the book, The Admissions Counselor Malaise, is available on Amazon.
Okay, awesome. And the second
Mhm.
thing, how can people get in contact with you if they are interested in Enroll ML?
Oh, yes. Oh, find me on LinkedIn for sure. That's the easiest way.
Okay.
I'm regularly posting there. And I promise you, if you type in my first name, Teege, that's about as far as you need to go. Yeah, I'm the only one that will show up.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I link his information at the bottom of this podcast. Okay, before we go, Teach, any final words or encouragement for our listeners?
We just need to make we're here for the students, not a trite line. Remind
Mm,
ourselves that, hold on to that, and don't let go.
love it. Love it. Absolutely short and sweet and to the point. Well, Teach, thank you so much for joining us today. It has definitely been an honor. I'm sure that our audience has picked up some amazing tips, and I hope that you guys are actually going to use them. All right. Until next time. Bye, everyone.